Hello, in this video I'm going to recap some of my favorite slow cooker recipes I've done recently. I'll leave the original videos where I posted these down below, and I'd love for you to subscribe here and be a part of this channel. Let's get started. So this night's recipe or dinner idea is kind of a take on the 8-can taco soup recipe. It has chicken in it, cream of chicken soup, black beans, sweet corn, enchilada sauce, pinto beans, diced tomatoes, taco sauce, and chicken broth or chicken stock. So I'm just adding in the cream of chicken soup there. I usually do the more liquidy things first, get those all mixed up. So that's the enchilada sauce. Getting that mixed in, then I'm adding the chicken broth, and I eyeball this. Probably want to do 2 cups, I would say. Depends on how liquidy you want it. I make my own taco seasoning, but you could easily add just a taco seasoning packet to it. Get that all blended in and add more if you want, which I did. And I am going to add the diced tomatoes, which I actually added 2 cans. I ended up adding another can later on after it had been cooking. Then you want to add your corn, pinto beans, and black beans drained and rinsed pretty well. Then I'm just adding in 2 frozen chicken breasts. And then I'm going to cook that on low. Cooked for about 4 hours until the chicken was ready to shred. And then I shred the chicken and put it back in and let it sit for, it's going to sit for probably another couple hours, and then we ate it with some tortilla strips on top. You could, if you felt like it was warm enough and done, you could move and you weren't ready to eat yet, you could move the crock pot to warm instead. You could also, for other toppings, you could add a drizzle of some sour cream, maybe some sour cream with lime in it, and some avocado. But we really like those tortilla strips on top. Or you could do just normal crackers, kind of like a chili. So this is a super easy, and it makes a lot. With all those cans, it makes a lot. I would say probably at least 10 servings. Probably more than that, probably 12. But it was really good, and we really like this for an easy dump and go crock pot meal. Our first dinner idea this week is Sloppy Joe's. I'm using 2 pounds of ground hamburger, cooking that up on the stovetop. Then I'm going to chop up this white onion and add it to that hamburger. The hamburger is probably enough for 6 to 8 people for one meal, or our household is 3 adults. So we will probably have it obviously tonight and then enough for leftovers tomorrow night. And then you're going to add those onions to the ground beef along with a couple pinches of salt, couple dashes of pepper. Mix that up, and you're going to let that cook until the hamburger is cooked all the way through. Now we will make our sauce. While that hamburger is cooking, you're going to want 2 cups of ketchup. That's a 1/2 cup measuring spoon. And a couple dashes of pepper, a couple pinches of salt, about 3 teaspoons of chili powder, or as much as you want. I just kind of eyeball it. And then 1 teaspoon of ground cloves, a 1/4 teaspoon of celery seeds, and then 2 tablespoons brown sugar, 1 tablespoon mustard, and 1 tablespoon apple cider vinegar. You could use regular vinegar as well. And they're going to really mix that up well. I do like to mix up most of my spices and sauces prior to adding to the dish. Now you're going to add all of this into a slow cooker, mix it up really well, and we're going to cook it on low for 3 to 4 hours. So the Sloppy Joes are done, and they were delicious. They were in the slow cooker for about 3 hours on low, actually 4 hours on low. I did have it on warm about the last half hour to hour. And then I used a measuring cup and I dished out a heaping third of a cup for my sandwich. And if you did that, you'd have about 12 servings, but I think most people probably would want more than that. But it ended up being about $1.25 for the sandwich by itself. So here you go. We just had some fresh veggies and some dip and some regular potato chips. It was great. This is a cabbage recipe, and I got the inspiration from a couple different people on YouTube here. Their channels are Magical Slow Cooker and Smokin' and Grillin' with AB, their YouTube channels. So I had a pound of bacon that I had chopped up into about 1-inch pieces, and I'm just frying that up. Now I'm going to dice up an onion, half an onion we'll use for this recipe. I do think the onion and pepper could be added maybe just a half hour before the cabbage is done in the slow cooker, because I do think the green pepper got overdone. That's the only thing I would change in this recipe. Other than that, it was delicious. And the cabbage got done just right. So I'm dicing up 1 green pepper. So I'm going to take out the bacon, leaving in the bacon grease in the pan, because we'll use that to saute up the onion and green pepper. We're going to put in some garlic into this and saute that up along with the onion and green pepper. I let that all cook together for about 10 minutes. I'm going to get a little bit of brownness to the onion. I did add salt and pepper as well. To everything I add salt and pepper, not dessert. I'm going to chop up 2 heads of cabbage. I would say that this would feed about, or would have about 6 to 8 servings in it, probably more like 8 servings. Then to the slow cooker, I added 1 cup of water, put the cabbage in, mix it up a little bit. I don't know, I end up using 2 cups of water. I'm not sure you need that much because cabbage has a lot of water, but it turned out perfect, so I think I would repeat it just the way I did it here, except for not adding the peppers right away. Putting in half the bacon, I'm kind of doing a layer where I'm doing half of everything and then I'll put in the other half just to kind of get it mixed up well. I do add more salt and pepper into this mix as well. And then I'll put another cup of water on that. I end up cooking this for 2 hours on high, so you could do like 3 hours on low, 3 to 4 hours. It's kind of tricky to get cabbage done just right, not too crunchy and not too soft. So, but it turned out perfect. So, but every slow cooker is different. So, this is the slow cooker cabbage recipe. For this meal, I made chicken tacos. I'm using chicken thighs just because they're a little cheaper in the grocery store as opposed to chicken breasts, but you could use either. And I'm using some homemade taco seasoning on top. There are many recipes you can find online to make your own. And then I threw almost an entire jar of salsa on top. I cooked it on low for 4 hours, I believe, before cutting it up. And then I just let it warm on the warm setting for the rest of the time until we are ready to eat. I mixed up some limes into some sour cream, and then I mix that up, and I end up deciding to also add some of that taco seasoning to it as well, so it's kind of like a seasoned sour cream to put on top of our tacos. And then I cut up 1 tomato, dice that up. It would depend on your family size. We have 3 adults, and we did have leftover tomato. We each had 2 tacos. I would say we had enough left over for another probably 3 or 4 tacos of the whole chicken and everything. So this is what I used. We also had some shredded lettuce, some Mexican cheese, and some taco sauce, and also the remaining salsa. Now I'm just heating up the tortillas. I just like to heat them up maybe a minute on each side. And then that's what the chicken looks like when it's done. You could also shred it if you wanted to, but I just decided to cut it up, was easier. And this is what my finished plate looks like. It was really delicious. That taco sauce gave it a pretty good kick, but it was really, really good. This recipe is a hearty tortellini soup. It was delicious. It's one of my favorite things I've made in a very long time. I could eat this every day. So you're gonna start by putting in 2 cans of diced tomatoes. One of those cans is fire roasted and the other one is plain. And then I ended up using this whole box of chicken stock. You could also use chicken broth. I'm measuring it out here because I'm thinking I want 4 cups, and then I realized the container is 4 cups. And then a can of tomato paste. Give it a good stir. And then I cook that on low before adding this meat. So I'm browning up some ground pork. Then you're going to drain the grease off the pork and add some garlic. I'm using minced garlic, a good 3 spoonfuls of it, a lot of garlic. You could also use regular garlic or even a garlic paste perhaps. Give that a good stir so you can start smelling the garlic. The house smells so good. Now I'm adding a lot of Italian seasoning. You could use your own homemade Italian seasoning as well. And then, of course, a pinch of salt and a dash of pepper, a few of them. Now I'm adding the meat to the crock pot. More salt and pepper, and more Italian seasoning. And then I cook that on low in the crock pot for about 4 hours. And then about a half hour before you're ready to eat, you can add in your tortellini. These are the refrigerated kind, not the frozen. So if you add the frozen, it might take a little longer. I just kept testing the tortellini to make sure it wasn't getting overdone, but also you want it to get hot. And then I added some half and half, probably about a cup. I go back in. I was going more by what I wanted the color of the soup to be. So it's probably about a cup of half and half. You could use milk or heavy whipping cream as well. And then I let that sit for, it was almost exactly a half hour. And I also added almost that entire tub of Parmesan cheese, and I left the remaining in the tub so that we could top our soup later. It was delicious, easy crock pot meal, super easy, very affordable. And I would say this serves at least 6 to 8 people or servings. So there you go. That is the crock pot tortellini I made. This is a turkey chili recipe. So we have 1 can of fire roasted diced tomatoes and 2 cans of chicken broth. I'm using some leftover turkey that we had from a previous meal. You could do this after Thanksgiving with your leftover turkey. And there's a can of tomato soup in there as well. Now I'm adding 1 can of red kidney beans that I did drain and rinse. And then 2 spoonfuls of minced garlic. Some cayenne spice. And I typically eyeball everything, but I'll have the exact measurements down below that I got from the recipe that inspired me. I have some Italian seasoning, some ground pepper, some crushed red pepper, and some chili powder, and cumin. I'm going to be cutting up 4 stalks of celery. Add that to the soup and give it a good stir. Now I'm going to dice up 1 red bell pepper. I think that's why I really like this chili. It's just a little different and not as many beans. I'm not a huge bean fan, so I like the red pepper in there. I like the celery. And you'll see me add a jalapeno. I like that as well. I like it spicy, so if you don't want the spice, I would probably leave out some of the cayenne and definitely leave out the jalapeno. But now I'm just putting in a diced white onion, half of it. But the crushed red pepper could also give it the kick, so you could leave that out as well if you don't like spicy. Now I'm just cutting up the leftover turkey that we had. This turkey was from a meal we made with the vegetable au gratin recipe, and we made that turkey because of finding it on sale after Thanksgiving and not having a ton of leftovers after Thanksgiving, so that is why we're having Thanksgiving basically 2 weeks in a row. Or Thanksgiving. Turkey. Now I am dicing up that jalapeno, wearing the gloves to protect myself from touching my eyes on accident. Trying to get all the seeds out is kind of a pain sometimes, but I love jalapeno. Then I'm going to add in half of a block of shredded sharp cheddar cheese. It was really delicious. It was very spicy again, so keep that in mind when looking at the recipe, but we loved it. I actually ended up freezing half of that we can have again in a month or so. And I end up adding a little bit of cheese on top and my favorite oyster crackers that I add to soup.